The pain of feeling what others ignore? Carl Jung. Have you ever felt a profound ache for a world that seems oblivious to its own suffering? A persistent, almost unbearable sensitivity to the subtle currents of pain, injustice, or unspoken sorrow that flow beneath the surface of everyday life. It's as if you're tuned to a frequency others simply cannot hear, or perhaps choose not to. This isn't merely empathy, it's a deeper resonance, a visceral connection to the collective unconscious, a burden and a gift that can leave one feeling profoundly isolated, even amidst a crowd. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist and psychoanalyst, spoke of this phenomenon, hinting at the psychological weight carried by those who perceive the shadows where others see only light, or worse, fail to see anything at all. He recognized that for some, the world's hidden hurts are not abstract concepts but lived realities, imprinted upon the soul with an intensity that demands acknowledgement. This sensitivity, while often perceived as a personal failing or an overactive imagination, can be a profound indicator of a deeper awareness, a connection to the psychic landscape that extends beyond the confines of the individual ego. It's the quiet agony of witnessing a truth that remains unacknowledged, a dissonance between the presented reality and the felt reality, a constant hum of what is wrong that others seem to navigate with serene, or perhaps, willful, ignorance. This script delves into that unique pain, the burden of seeing what is overlooked, and explores the profound philosophical and psychological implications of carrying such a heightened awareness in a world that often prioritizes superficial comfort over uncomfortable truths. We will embark on a journey not to dismiss this sensitivity, but to understand its origins, its purpose, and its potential for transformation. It's a journey into the heart of what it means to be truly awake in a slumbering world, to feel the world's pain not as an external phenomenon, but as an intrinsic part of one's own being, and to grapple with the existential solitude that this profound attunement can engender. We will explore how this deep-seated awareness, this pain of feeling what others ignore, shapes our perception of reality, our relationships, and ultimately, our place within the grand, often bewildering, tapestry of human experience. It is a contemplative exploration of a fundamental aspect of the human psyche, one that often goes unarticulated but is deeply felt by those who carry its weight. This heightened sensitivity, this intuitive grasp of an underlying discord, often manifests as a form of existential loneliness. It's the quiet ache of standing at a precipice, seeing the vast, unacknowledged chasm of human suffering, while others cheerfully picnic on the edge, seemingly unaware of the precipice itself. The world hums with a frequency of quiet desperation, of unmet needs, of subtle degradations, and for those attuned, this hum becomes a deafening roar, a constant reminder of what is broken. This isn't about an inherent flaw in the observer, but rather a different mode of perception, akin to possessing enhanced sensory organs that perceive wavelengths invisible to the general populace. Imagine seeing the ultraviolet patterns on flowers, the subtle shifts in air pressure before a storm, or hearing the ultrasonic calls of bats. This is a similar phenomenon, but applied to the psychic and emotional atmosphere of human existence. The pain arises not just from perceiving these things, but from the profound disconnect it creates. When you feel the weight of a friend's unspoken anxiety, the simmering resentment in a colleague's polite smile, or the societal indifference to systemic injustices, and you find yourself unable to articulate it in a way that resonates with those around you, a profound isolation can set in. They might dismiss your concerns as overthinking, as being too dramatic, or as simply projecting your own issues. This invalidation can be as painful as the initial perception, compounding the burden by adding a layer of personal misunderstanding. Furthermore, this acute awareness can be a double-edged sword, impacting one's own well-being in subtle yet significant ways. Consider the individual who, while navigating their own personal challenges, also feels the collective anxieties of their community, or even the global unease. They might find themselves absorbing the ambient stress, the unexpressed grief, or the pervasive sense of unease, not as a conscious choice, but as an involuntary psychic absorption. This can lead to a state of chronic emotional fatigue, a feeling of being perpetually drained by the sheer volume of felt, yet unarticulated, suffering. It's like carrying a psychic sponge, constantly soaking up the emotional residue of the world without an adequate mechanism for wringing it out. This constant exposure can also foster a sense of cynicism or despair, as the sheer magnitude of what is perceived as wrong can feel overwhelming, leading to a feeling of helplessness. What is the point of trying to mend a single thread when the entire tapestry seems to be unraveling? This perspective, while understandable, often overlooks the potential power inherent in such sensitivity. It's a crucial juncture where understanding the nature of this pain can lead to a shift from passive suffering to active engagement, or at least, to a more integrated way of being with this unique perceptual gift. The challenge lies in learning to distinguish between one's own emotional landscape and the psychic environment, a skill that requires conscious cultivation and a deeper understanding of one's own inner workings. A further dimension to this sensitivity, it involves the potential for it to manifest as an almost uncanny ability to perceive the unspoken narratives woven into the fabric of our daily interactions. It's the subtle tremor in a voice that betrays a carefully constructed facade of confidence, the fleeting shadow in someone's eyes that hints at a past trauma they've never shared, or the lingering silence after a seemingly benign statement that speaks volumes about underlying tensions. This isn't about mind reading in a literal sense, but rather an intuitive attunement to the energetic and emotional undercurrents that shape human communication. For the individual experiencing this, the world can feel like a vast, intricate tapestry of hidden meanings, where the spoken word is merely the visible surface, and the true story lies in the subtle vibrations, the unspoken cues, the emotional resonance that most people overlook. This can be profoundly disorienting, as it often leads to a constant state of guardedness, a perpetual scanning of the psychic environment for signs of distress or deception. The inherent challenge here is distinguishing between genuine perception and the projection of one's own anxieties or past experiences. It requires a rigorous internal discernment, a constant questioning of whether the perceived truth originates from the external reality or from the internal landscape. This capacity, when unexamined, can lead to a kind of hypervigilance, where every interaction is filtered through a lens of potential hidden meaning, fostering a sense of distrust and isolation. Consider the impact of this on personal relationships. When you consistently pick up on the unexpressed doubts of a partner, the suppressed resentments of a friend, or the unspoken fears of a family member, how does that shape your engagement? It can lead to an impulse to preemptively address these perceived issues, to offer comfort or solutions before they are even articulated, or even before they are consciously acknowledged by the other person. This well-intentioned intervention, however, can often be met with confusion, resistance, or even offense. The recipient might feel misunderstood, their private emotional space invaded, or their capacity for self-management undermined. Consequently, the sensitive individual might withdraw, fearing further misinterpretation or the disaction of constantly trying to bridge the gap between their perception and the other's reality. This creates a peculiar paradox. The very sensitivity that might drive a desire for deeper connection can, if unskillfully managed, erect insurmountable barriers. It's the experience of seeing a faint signal that others dismiss as static, and then being frustrated when your attempts to tune into that signal are perceived as interference. Moreover, this heightened perception can bleed into an individual's engagement with broader societal issues, fostering a profound sense of disillusionment. When one is acutely aware of the pervasive nature of systemic inequalities, the erosion of ethical standards in public discourse, or the quiet desperation underlying widespread consumerism, the dominant narratives of progress and contentment can feel like a cruel charade. It's the feeling of being the only one in a room who notices the emperor has no clothes, or the only one who hears the discordant notes in a seemingly harmonious symphony. This awareness can lead to a deep-seated frustration with the status quo, a questioning of societal norms that appear to perpetuate suffering through their variability. The challenge here lies in navigating this disillusionment without succumbing to cynicism or despair. It's about finding a way to acknowledge the perceived flaws without letting them paralyze one's capacity for engagement or hope. This often involves developing a robust internal compass, a personal philosophy that can provide grounding amidst the perceived chaos, and a commitment to acting from a place of authentic conviction, even when that conviction is not widely shared or understood. It's a delicate dance between perceiving the world as it is, and choosing how to respond to that perception without being consumed by it. This heightened awareness, this capacity to feel what others overlook, often presents a unique challenge in the realm of personal growth and self-improvement. While many strive for a state of contented equilibrium, the sensitive individual may find themselves perpetually unsettled, compelled by an internal compass that points towards an often uncomfortable truth. This isn't a desire for perpetual dissatisfaction, but rather a deep-seated recognition that true growth requires confronting the less palatable aspects of existence. Consider the individual who, while observing societal trends towards superficial happiness, feels an insistent pull towards introspection, towards excavating the underlying anxieties and unresolved conflicts that fuel these trends. They might find themselves drawn to philosophical inquiry, to art, or to practices that delve into the shadow aspects of the psyche, not out of morbid fascination, but out of a profound understanding that neglecting these dimensions leads to a superficial and ultimately fragile existence. This can manifest as a resistance to conventional advice for happiness, such as just think positive or focus on the good, because these platitudes feel like an evasion of a deeper, more significant reality. The pain here is the perceived futility of chasing fleeting pleasures when fundamental imbalances remain unaddressed. Building upon this, another crucial layer is the way this sensitivity influences our perception of responsibility. When one feels the interconnectedness of all things, the subtle ways in which individual actions ripple outwards, the burden of ethical consideration can become immense. It's not merely about avoiding personal wrongdoing, but about a heightened awareness of the systemic injustices, the environmental degradation, and the collective psychological patterns that contribute to suffering. For instance, witnessing the casual dismissal of ecological concerns or the normalization of exploitative labor practices can evoke a visceral reaction, a sense of personal complicity, even if one is not directly involved. This can lead to a relentless internal dialogue about one's own consumption habits, one's professional choices, and the extent to which one is actively contributing to or mitigating these larger issues. The pain stems from the realization that inaction or insufficient action in the face of such pervasive problems carries a moral weight, a weight that others may not feel or acknowledge. This can foster a deep sense of existential responsibility, a feeling that one is called to be a conscious participant in addressing these larger imbalances, even when the scale of the problems seems insurmountable. Consequently, this sensitivity often translates into a unique approach to conflict and disagreement, rather than engaging in superficial debates or seeking to win an argument. The individual attuned to overlooked pain may be more inclined to explore the underlying needs and fears that drive opposing viewpoints. This can be a challenging path, as it requires immense patience and a willingness to engage with perspectives that may seem irrational or even harmful. However, the underlying motivation is a deep-seated belief that true resolution lies not in silencing dissent, but in understanding the root causes of discord. Imagine a situation where a disagreement arises from a misunderstanding fueled by unexpressed anxieties. While others might resort to accusatory language or defensive posturing, the sensitive individual might seek to uncover the unspoken vulnerabilities that are being protected, the fears that are manifesting as aggression. The pain in this context arises from the difficulty of communicating this nuanced understanding to others who are operating from a more surface-level emotional plane. It can feel like trying to explain a complex symphony to someone who only hears individual notes, leading to frustration and a sense of being fundamentally misunderstood in one's attempts at deeper connection and resolution. This often leads to a preference for solitude or for interactions with those who share a similar capacity for nuanced emotional perception, further deepening the sense of isolation from the broader social milieu. This acute sensitivity can also manifest as a profound difficulty in engaging with superficial pleasantries or the performative aspects of social interaction. The individual might feel a deep dissonance when confronted with conversations that skirt around significant emotional truths, opting instead for trivial exchanges about weather or inconsequential events. It's as if they are standing in a room where a palpable tension hangs in the air, a significant unspoken issue, while others are engaged in lighthearted chatter, meticulously avoiding any acknowledgement of the elephant in the room. This isn't a judgment on those who engage in such interactions, but rather a personal struggle with authenticity. The sensitive soul may find it taxing, even draining, to participate in these social rituals, feeling a constant pull to address the underlying currents, to seek genuine connection rather than polite performance. This can lead to a withdrawal from social gatherings or a tendency to seek out deeper, more meaningful connections, even if those connections are fewer in number. The pain here is the feeling of being out of sync with societal norms, of having a different operating system for social engagement, which can breed a sense of alienation. The world, for them, can feel like a stage play where everyone else is adhering to a script, and they are the only one who has glimpsed the backstage realities, the rehearsals, and the underlying anxieties of the actors. Furthermore, consider the impact on one's relationship with ambition and societal success. While many are driven by external markers of achievement, promotions, accolades, material wealth, the sensitive individual might find their motivations stemming from a different source. They might be driven by a desire to alleviate a specific kind of suffering they perceive, or to contribute to a cause that resonates with their deep-seated values. Even if these pursuits are less glamorous or financially rewarding, the pain of feeling what others ignore can translate into a profound dissatisfaction with conventional career paths that seem to contribute to societal problems or ignore underlying human needs. For instance, someone deeply attuned to the environmental crisis might feel a moral imperative to work in sustainability, even if it means foregoing a more lucrative position in a polluting industry. This choice, while aligned with their inner compass, can be met with incomprehension from those who prioritize financial security and traditional markers of success. The pain arises from the perceived lack of understanding regarding the internal motivations that guide these choices, the feeling that their deepest commitments are not validated or even recognized. It's the quiet struggle of navigating a world that often measures worth by external achievements, while one's own internal landscape is driven by a different, often less visible, set of values. Another crucial layer concerns the impact of this sensitivity on one's personal narrative and self-perception. When one consistently perceives the world through a lens of nuanced emotional awareness, it can be challenging to reconcile this with the dominant cultural narratives that often emphasize simplicity, directness, and a more straightforward emotional experience. The sensitive individual might question their own perceptions, wondering if they are indeed exaggerating, overthinking, or projecting. This internal doubt, this questioning of one's own reality, can be a deeply isolating experience. It's like being an explorer in uncharted territory with no maps or guides, and constantly questioning whether the strange and beautiful landscapes they are encountering are real or merely figments of their imagination. The pain, in this instance, is the existential loneliness of having to validate one's own experience in the absence of external affirmation. This often leads to a quest for self-understanding, a deep dive into introspection and psychological exploration, in an effort to map their own internal terrain, and to find a language that can articulate their unique way of experiencing the world. It's a journey of self-discovery undertaken in the quiet solitude of one's own consciousness, driven by the persistent, undeniable feeling that there is more to reality than meets the unperceiving eye. This ongoing internal dialogue, while potentially arduous, is also the crucible in which a profound sense of self-knowledge and inner resilience can be forged, allowing the individual to navigate the world with a more integrated sense of their own unique perceptual gifts. This heightened awareness can also profoundly shape one's engagement with the concept of truth itself. For the individual who feels what others overlook, truth is rarely a simple, objective pronouncement. Instead, it often presents as a multi-layered, deeply contextualized phenomenon, imbued with the emotional residues of its perception. Consider how this applies when you witness a public figure delivering a speech that, on the surface, appears confident and authoritative. While many might accept the pronouncements at face value, the sensitive observer might pick up on subtle cues: a fleeting hesitation, a guarded posture, a tremor in the voice that suggests a deeper internal conflict, or a carefully constructed narrative masking a less comfortable reality. This isn't about uncovering a malicious lie, but rather about perceiving the shadow self, the unacknowledged doubts or fears that inform even the most polished public persona. Consequently, this leads to a more nuanced understanding of honesty, where sincerity is less about factual accuracy and more about the courage to acknowledge one's own internal complexities, even when they are not readily apparent to others. The pain arises when this nuanced perception clashes with a societal demand for black-and-white certainty, forcing the sensitive individual to either simplify their understanding or risk being perceived as overly skeptical or even paranoid. Building on this, the nature of personal boundaries is often re-examined by those who feel the emotional undercurrents of their environment. When one possesses an almost porous psychic boundary, absorbing the ambient moods and anxieties of others, the very concept of a distinct self can become fluid. This isn't a loss of identity, but rather a continuous negotiation with the external, psychic landscape. Imagine navigating a crowded marketplace, where the collective hum of anticipation, frustration, and fleeting desires washes over you. For the sensitive soul, this is not mere background noise. It's a tangible experience that demands conscious management. The challenge lies in differentiating between one's own emotional state and the influx of external feelings. This often necessitates the development of deliberate practices for psychic containment and release, akin to a gardener tending to a delicate ecosystem, carefully distinguishing between the native flora and invasive species. The pain here stems from the sheer effort required to maintain a coherent sense of self amidst such pervasive psychic permeability, and the potential for emotional exhaustion when these boundaries are not rigorously maintained. Furthermore, this sensitivity can lead to a unique form of artistic or creative expression, one that seeks to give voice to the unarticulated. Artists, writers, and musicians who possess this trait often find themselves drawn to themes of hidden suffering, existential angst, or the quiet beauty found in overlooked moments. Consider the composer who, moved by the silent grief of a community, translates that emotion into a haunting melody, or the painter who captures the subtle interplay of light and shadow on a weathered face, revealing a lifetime of unspoken stories. This creative impulse is not merely a stylistic choice, it's a psychic necessity, a way of processing and externalizing the profound emotional resonances that might otherwise remain a solitary burden. The pain, paradoxically, can fuel this creative fire, transforming a potential source of isolation into a conduit for connection, albeit a connection that often speaks to a more select audience, who resonate with its particular frequency. This act of creation becomes a form of validation, a declaration that what is felt is real and worthy of expression, even if it remains invisible to the majority. Conversely, this heightened awareness can also manifest as a profound appreciation for moments of genuine, unadulterated presence. When one is so attuned to the complexities and hidden pains of existence, moments of simple, unburdened connection become incredibly potent. Imagine a quiet conversation with a trusted friend, where unspoken understanding flows effortlessly, or a solitary walk in nature, where the sheer aliveness of the environment washes over the senses without the usual psychic clutter. These are not merely pleasant experiences, they are vital reprieves, moments where the weight of perceiving what others ignore is temporarily lifted, allowing for a profound sense of peace and belonging. The appreciation for these moments is intensified by the contrast with the usual state of heightened awareness, making them feel like luminous islands in a sea of unspoken complexities. The challenge then is to cultivate these spaces of genuine presence, to recognize their restorative power, and to integrate the lessons learned from them into the ongoing navigation of a world that often demands a more guarded engagement. This appreciation for simple presence is not a retreat from the world's difficulties, but rather a recalibration, a necessary grounding that allows for continued engagement with a renewed sense of inner clarity and fortitude. Reflecting on this journey so far, we've traced the contours of a unique sensitivity, a way of experiencing the world where the unspoken resonates with profound clarity. It's as if the veil has been lifted, revealing intricate patterns of feeling and meaning that often remain hidden from the casual gaze. This heightened attunement, while often a source of deep introspection and a profound connection to the subtle currents of existence, can also weave a complex tapestry of personal challenge. The world, perceived through this lens, becomes a space where the surface narrative rarely tells the whole story, and where the weight of unacknowledged truths can press heavily upon the soul. We've explored how this perception shapes our interactions, our understanding of societal dynamics, and even our very sense of self, often creating a subtle yet persistent dissonance with the prevailing modes of engagement. As we pivot towards our final reflection, consider how these various threads converge, not into a simple conclusion, but into a more integrated understanding of this particular way of being. The world, in its vast complexity, presents itself to each of us differently, colored by our innate capacities and the unique lenses through which we view reality. For some, this lens offers an expanded spectrum of emotional and psychic awareness, revealing the delicate interconnections and the often unseen vulnerabilities that bind us. It's akin to discovering a hidden language, one that communicates not through explicit pronouncements, but through subtle shifts in tone, unspoken gestures, and the palpable atmosphere that surrounds us. Navigating this landscape requires a particular kind of inner navigation, a constant calibration between the external world and the internal resonance it evokes. In light of these insights, the path forward becomes less about eradicating this sensitivity and more about cultivating a wise engagement with it. It is about recognizing that what might initially feel like a burden can, with understanding and conscious practice, transform into a profound source of insight and connection. The challenge lies not in silencing the echoes of what others ignore, but in learning to listen to them with discernment, to integrate their wisdom without being overwhelmed by their weight. This journey is about finding a harmonious balance, where the depth of perception is honored, and the potential for empathy and understanding is harnessed, not as a solitary burden, but as a bridge towards a more authentic and compassionate engagement with life itself. The culmination of our exploration invites a deeper consideration of how this unique way of seeing can ultimately illuminate not just the shadows, but the path towards a more meaningful existence. The resonance we've explored, this profound sensitivity to the world's overlooked pains, is not a flaw to be corrected but a unique mode of perception to be understood. It is the quiet hum beneath the surface noise, the subtle tremor that speaks of deeper realities. To feel what others ignore is to carry a burden, certainly, but it is also to possess a rare gift, the capacity to perceive the world with a depth that can foster profound empathy, illuminate hidden truths, and ultimately, guide us toward more authentic connections. This isn't about an innate superiority, but a different attunement, a psychic sensitivity that allows one to navigate the emotional currents of existence with a nuanced awareness that can be both exhilarating and deeply isolating. The challenge, then, is not to suppress this sensitivity, but to learn to live with it consciously, to integrate its insights without becoming consumed by the weight of what is perceived. It is about finding the delicate balance between acknowledging the world's suffering and maintaining one's own psychic equilibrium. Between offering a deeper understanding and respecting the boundaries of those who perceive differently, this journey of understanding invites us to consider that the pain of feeling what others ignore is, in essence, a call to deeper consciousness. It is an invitation to move beyond superficial engagement and to seek out the authentic heart of human experience, even when that heart carries the scars of unseen wounds. It suggests that true connection is not built on shared superficialities, but on the courage to acknowledge the complexities, the vulnerabilities, and the quiet sorrows that shape our collective human tapestry. For those who carry this heightened sensitivity, the path forward is not one of seeking to become like others, but of honoring their own unique way of experiencing the world, and finding ways to translate that perception into meaningful action or quiet presence. It is about recognizing that within this perceived burden lies the potential for profound wisdom, for a deeper wellspring of compassion, and for a more authentic way of being in the world. The true practice begins now, not in grand gestures, but in the quiet moments of daily life, in the mindful observation of one's own reactions, in the gentle inquiry into the unspoken needs of others, and in the courageous embrace of one's own unique perceptual truth. It is in learning to hold the awareness of what is overlooked with both clarity and kindness, transforming potential isolation into a source of deeper understanding and connection. This sensitivity, when met with conscious intention, becomes less of a burden and more of a compass, guiding us towards a more integrated and compassionate existence, one where the unseen is acknowledged, and the quiet echoes of the heart are heard.